Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. So, in this lesson, inshallah, we'll be analyzing the poem The Little Boy Found. The little boy, lost in the lonely fen, led by the wandering light, began to cry, but God, ever nigh, appeared like his father in white. He kissed the child, and by the hand led, and to his mother brought, who in sorrow pale, through the lonely dale, a little boy weeping sought. So, this poem is a very emotional, a very touching narrative of a lost child guided by a divine fatherly figure. वैसे एक बात मजे की है इसके अंदर पड़ी कि we normally tell the love of God and our parents to the love of uh, God, the love of Allah. But over here in this point, they are telling the love of God, love of God through the love of Father. Okay, so the God is appearing like his father. Okay, I hope you understood the difference. Sorry. So this is a very emotional narrative of a lost child who was guided by a divine fatherly figure, and he is lost in a lonely, in a desolate fen. Fen is a swamp. Okay, and the child's cries evoke the appearance of God and portrayed as a comforting presence similar to protective father. So the way the child is crying, it this led to the appearance of God, and that uh, God's presence is portrayed as a very comforting presence. Or comforting presence is similar to the presence of a very protective father. सही है? So the divine intervention, यानी कि intervention from the God, it includes a gentle kiss and it leading the child back to his sorrowful mother. So this is the whole poem about. So this poem it explores the ideas of guidance, God's help and comfort. क्या कहते हैं? Just wait a minute. हाँ जी. So it explores the ideas of guidance and God's help and comfort, which we get through the guided leader. So the poem tells the story of a small boy who gets lost in a lonely marshy area. He's alone and crying because he's scared. And in response to his fear, God appears to him in the form of a very fatherly figure. And God is shown as a loving, caring, and क्या कहते हैं always near, always present. नाय का क्या मतलब होता है? Ever nigh. नाय मतलब always near. Okay? So God is present as a person who is always present, who is always good. And he's dressed in white, and this suggests purity and kindness. God kisses the child and showing tenderness and compassion. He then takes the boy by the hand, okay, and leads him safely through the difficult land. And being with God gives the child comfort and reassurance. अब उसको सुकून आ जाएगा. So the poem suggests in times of darkness and confusion, God is the one who provides guidance and support. And in the end, God leads the boy back to his mother. She is described as pale and sad, searching for her lost child. And their reunion is emotional and meaningful. It shows that divine help brings comfort and solves human problems. Overall, the poem presents God as a loving protector who saves the child and reunites with his mother. And with this, we will move on to the stanza by stanza, line by line explanation of the poem. First stanza. The little boy lost in the lonely fen, led by the wandering light, began to cry, but God ever nigh appeared like his father in white. So, in the opening stanza, we see a sad and a touching scene. A young boy is lonely, is lost, and is lost in a lonely swamp, in a lonely marsh, and that is described as a lonely fen. This phrase, lonely fen, it immediately creates a feeling of isolation and also of fear. Okay, so the child feels helpless and then he begins to cry, showing how scared and vulnerable he is. In the darkness, a wandering light appears and leads him, giving him what? Giving him hope in the middle of his confusion. But the light is not just an ordinary light. It represents something greater. क्या चीज है भाई? God. God appears to the frightened boy, bringing comfort and safety. So Blake describes God as appearing like his father in white. This is important because it compares God to a loving father. So the color white suggests purity, goodness, and kindness. It shows that God is gentle and caring, not frightening. So God responds quickly and kindly to the boy's fear, offering him protection, offering him reassurance, offering him guidance. So Blake uses clear and powerful images to show how close God is to human beings, especially in times of trouble. The wandering light stands for divine guidance, and God's fatherly appearance shows love and care. So the first stanza introduces the main ideas of the poem. क्या है? Human weakness, and then God's presence, and the comfort that comes from faith, यानी कि believing in the God. With this, we move on to the second stanza. He kissed the child and by the hand led, and to his mother brought, who in sorrow pale to the lonely dale, a little boy weeping sought. So in the final stanza, this poem comes to a very touching and comforting ending. God, who appeared to the lost boy in the lonely marsh, now takes care of him with love and kindness. When God kisses a child, it is not just a simple action. It shows deep love and care. This moment suggests a very close and gentle relationship between God and a child, uh, या फिर a human being like a loving parent. God and a man like a loving parent. So when God leads the boy by the hand, it shows guidance, shows protection. It also shows that God is personally involved in helping him, in assisting him. So God does not only comfort the child, but also takes him back to his mother. So the line "and to his mother brought" is important because it shows that the child is finally safe, is finally reunited with his family. The mother is described in a sorrow pain through the lonely day. This means that she is very worried, okay, and she's very sad as she searches for her crying child. The word is sorrow pain, it clearly show her grief and fear. Pale away. And just like the lonely fen, where the child was lost, the lonely dale, yani ke lonely valley, it shows her feeling of isolation and sadness. Yani ke without the child, the whole valley was alone, empty for the mother. So both mother and child experience loneliness and pain. Okay. However, God's help brings comfort and happiness. He unites the lost child with his grieving mother. This final stanza shows that the main message of the poem is that God brings comfort, guidance, and hope during times of fear and sadness. So through simple but powerful images, Blake reminds us of divine love and the healing power of care and compassion. With this, we move on to the themes present in this poem. The first theme is divine guidance. The boy is afraid and begins to cry. But the poem says, began to cry, but God ever nigh. This shows that God is always near, especially in the times of need, especially in the times of fear and sadness. So when the child feels helpless, God appears to help him. This suggests that God cares about human suffering and responds with love and support. The second theme is parental love. God appears like his father in white, which shows him as a loving, protective parent. Okay, the image of white suggests purity and goodness and the courage to came. When God kisses the child and leads him by the hand, it shows tenderness, it shows gentleness, it shows care. These actions make God seem like a gentle father guiding his child to safety. The next and the last theme is reunion and comfort. God not only comforts the boy but also takes him back to his mother. He is described as in sorrow pale through the lonely day, showing how sad and worried she is while searching for her son. So when they are reunited, her sadness ends. This shows that divine help brings peace and emotional healing. Through the simple story of a lost child, the poem shows that how God guides and protects and comforts people in times of need, in times of troubles. It also shows that true comfort comes from love and care and being reunited with those we love. With this, we will move on to the poetic techniques present in this poem. The first one being imagery. It is very important in the poem, imagery. is very important in the poem because it helps the reader clearly imagine what is happening. The line God ever nigh, जो कि हम अपने दिन में भी कहते हैं कि अल्लाह ताला जो है आपकी शहरत से भी ज्यादा करीब है, तो God ever nigh appeared like his father in fight. This is imagery. It creates a strong picture of God as a loving and a protective father. This image makes God seem close and kind and comforting. It increases the emotional effect of the poem by showing God in a way that feels familiar and real. So this can be seen in the use of color and actions in the poem. क्या चीज? I'm talking about symbolism now. Symbolism किसके through present हो रही है? Through the use of color and actions in the poem. यानी कि कोई ना कोई कलर है, वो सिंबॉलिफाई किसी चीज को कर रहा है, कोई ना कोई एक्शन है, दैट इज ऑल्सो सिंबॉलिफाइंग समथिंग. So when God appears in white, तो वो क्या सिंबॉलिफाई कर रहा है? It suggests purity, goodness and kindness. The color white is often linked with goodness and holy qualities, showing that God's help is positive and caring. And the action of kissing the child. So when God kisses the child, it is a sign of love. किसका symbol हो गया? Sign of love हो गया and affection हो गया. This action highlights the gentle and compassionate bond between God and the child. Okay. With this, we move on to the third and the last literary device, that is metaphor. This technique is used to show the mother's emotional state as she looks for her lost child. The line, "Who in sorrow pale through the lonely day," describes her sadness as a kind of paleness. Okay, so paleness is a metaphor for sadness. It connects her deep grief to the empty and the lonely landscape around. The lonely day, lonely valley becomes the the the, the idea for her deep grief. This comparison helps the reader better understand how strong and painful the mother's sorrow is. With this, we move on to the structure and form of this poem. So this poem is a very short poem made up of only two stanzas, and each stanza has four lines, यानी कि quatrain. The four-line the structure is called what? A quatrain. So the poem follows an A-B-C-B rhyme scheme, which means that the second and the fourth lines of each stanza rhyme. This regular rhyme pattern gives the poem musical and balanced feel. The steady structure and rhyme create a smooth rhythm, which adds to the poem's calmness and thoughtful mood. The regular form may also suggest order and harmony. यानी कि जब तक गॉड है सब चीजें ऑर्डर में होंगी. हार्ट कभी कभार जो स्ट्रगलिंग फेज होता है, दैट इज ऑल्सो ऑर्डर. Okay, which matches the poem's themes of divine guidance and comfort. With this, we move on to the meter present in this poem. The meter of this poem is mainly anapestic. The meter is, wait a minute, is anapest या फिर anapestic. क्या मतलब? It means that many of the lines follow a pattern of two unstressed syllables followed by one stressed. देखो iambic क्या होता है? Unstressed और stressed. Anapest क्या होता है? Two unstressed and then followed by a stress. यानी कि iambic होता है डडम and anapestic होता है डडडम. So this creates a light flowing rhythm that sounds gentle and song-like. For example, अगर हम ले रहे हैं पहली अपना इस लाइन को, the little boy lost in the lonely tent. This line largely follows an anapestic movement, giving it what? Rhythm that reflects the movement of the lost child. However, play does not keep the meter perfectly regular. ये थोड़ी सी irregularity है, जैसे कि rhyme scheme के अंदर भी थोड़ी सी irregularity. But that irregularity is in a pattern. Therefore, that also becomes regularity. अच्छा, अब आ जाते हैं मीटर की irregularity पे. Some lines are shorter and more compressed, जैसे कि led by the wandering line, this is shorter and this is also iambic. इसका rhythm भी iambic है. फिर इसी तरीके से began to cry but God ever nigh. This line moves back to anapestic again. Okay, restoring the flowing movement. So back and forth हो रहा है. So overall, the poem alternates between longer anapestic lines and shorter lines of iambic. So this creates a ballad-like rhythm, which is very simple, which is very musical, and it suits the poem's childlike tone and frequency. So the gentle song-like meter reflects the poem's mood of comfort and reassurance. ये सब सही हो जाएगा. The steady rhythm also mirrors the same sense of divine order and guidance that the poem expresses. With this, we end our analysis. If you've got any questions, please feel free to ask. Thank you.